September 1943, Berlin. The late summer air hung heavy over the Reich Ministry of War as a Luftwaffe intelligence officer placed a classified dossier on the desk of Admiral Karl Dönitz, Commander-in-Chief of the German Navy and Hitler's designated successor. The file contained aerial reconnaissance photographs, grainy but unmistakable, of the Kaiser Shipyards in Richmond, California. In one image, a Liberty ship's hull rose from the slipway, its steel plates still raw and unpainted. In another, rows of workers in coveralls moved with disciplined efficiency along gantries and cranes. A notation in red pencil circled a detail that defied belief. 60% of labor force appears female. Dönitz, a career submariner with ice-blue eyes and a mind honed by years of calculating tonnage and torpedo spreads, studied the photos in silence. Then he read the attached analysis. Herr Admiral, our analysts estimate that 3 ships are being completed daily at these West Coast yards. The workforce consists largely of women, former housewives, secretaries, farm laborers, trained in less than 3 weeks. They are building vessels faster than we can sink them. Dönitz set the report down. His expression did not betray alarm, but something deeper, resignation. He had known for months that the Battle of the Atlantic was slipping away, but this was confirmation of a strategic reality too vast to counter. Germany was losing a war of production not to engineers or industrialists, but to women who, just 2 years earlier, had been baking bread in Oregon, teaching school in Iowa, or tending crops in Oklahoma. And they were building ships in 4 days, a feat that would have been dismissed as propaganda, if not for the photographic evidence staring back at him. The mathematics were brutal, irreversible, and rooted in a single, devastating truth. America and the architects of this revolution were not generals or admirals, but ordinary citizens, mobilized with unprecedented speed and scale. The story begins not in Berlin, but in Richmond, California, March 1942. Rose Clementine Hickey, a 32-year-old mother of 2 from Portland, Oregon, stood outside the gates of Kaiser Shipyard No. 2, clutching a newspaper advertisement that read, "Wanted, workers for war effort. Training provided. Good wages. Patriotism. Welcome." Her husband, James, was serving with the 7th Infantry Division in the Pacific. Money was tight. Purpose was scarce. The ad promised both. Rose had never held a welding torch. She had never set foot in a factory. Her world had been laundry lines, school lunches, and Sunday church. But like tens of thousands of American women, she answered the call, not out of ideology, but necessity and duty. According to records preserved in the Bancroft Library at the University of California, Berkeley, Rose was one of 2,000 women who applied to work at Richmond Shipyards in March 1942 alone. By year's end, over 15,000 women would be employed across Kaiser's 7 West Coast facilities. This was not a social experiment. It was a wartime imperative born of desperation and ingenuity. When the U.S. entered the war in December 1941, its merchant fleet was aging, its shipbuilding capacity outdated. Traditional yards, like New York shipbuilding, required 230 days to construct a standard cargo vessel. At that pace, the Allies would lose the Atlantic before the first Liberty ship even launched. Enter Henry J. Kaiser, a construction magnate with no shipbuilding experience, but a genius for industrial organization. His solution was radical. Deconstruct shipbuilding into repeatable tasks, train workers in days, not years, and hire anyone capable of learning point explanation. In January 1942, Kaiser opened a 24-hour training school in Richmond. It could process 500 workers per shift, teaching them one specific skill: vertical seam welding, riveting, pipe fitting through relentless repetition. Rose was assigned to vertical welding, the technique used to join upright steel plates on ship bulkheads. Her instructor, journeyman welder Thomas Chen, told her on day one, "You don't need to know how to weld everything. You need to know how to weld this one thing perfectly. You'll do it 1,000 times. By the end of 2 weeks, your welds will be as good as mine." This approach horrified the maritime establishment. William Francis Gibbs, America's foremost naval architect, visited the facility in April 1942 and wrote privately, "Kaiser is training welders in 14 days. The unions require 4 years. Either Kaiser is producing dangerously unqualified workers, or we have been wasting 3 years and 11 months of training time for generations." I suspect the latter. Rose completed her training on March 27, 1942. She received a certificate, a welding hood, gloves, and an assignment to Shipway No. 3, where Hull 197 was under construction. Her starting wage, 87 cents per hour, 40% above the average for female workers in 1942. Her first day on the production floor was a baptism by fire. The noise was deafening. Dozens of arcs crackling, cranes groaning, steel clanging. She was assigned to a crew of 8 welders, 6 of them women, tasked with sealing a 30-foot-tall, 40-foot-wide bulkhead. Supervisor Margaret Foster, one of the few experienced welders, gave clear instructions. "We need 120 feet of continuous vertical seam. No gaps, no weak spots. Ships' lives depend on these welds holding in Atlantic storms and under U-boat attack." Rose began at 8:17 a.m. The motion was automatic. Position torch, strike arc, move steadily, watch the molten pool. By noon, she'd finished her 15-foot section. Inspector Harold Morrison, a 60-year-old maritime veteran, examined her work with a critical eye. He ran his glove along the seam, checked penetration depth with a gauge, then marked it with yellow chalk. "Good work," he said. "Better than half the men I inspected yesterday. This was not an anomaly." Production records, analyzed by historian Amy Kesselman in her 1990 study, Fleeting Opportunities, show that female welders at Kaiser yards had defect rates 15% lower than their male counterparts in 1943. Sociologist Dr. Constance Bowman, who worked in a San Diego aircraft plant, identified why. Women followed instructions precisely, showed greater patience with repetitive precision work, and felt intense pressure to prove their competence in a male-dominated environment. Within 3 months, Rose was training new workers. By August, she was assistant supervisor of a 12-person crew building destroyer escorts. Her wage rose to $1.15 per hour. She scheduled shifts, inspected welds, coordinated with other teams. The transformation was profound, not just personal, but societal. By mid-1943, 2.5 million American women worked in war production. At Kaiser's peak in November 1943, 53,000 women, 27% of the total workforce, built ships across 7 yards. In Richmond alone, women comprised nearly 30% of production workers. Compare this to traditional yards. New York shipbuilding employed 35,000 workers, but fewer than 2,000 were women, mostly in clerical roles. Kaiser's willingness to tap an ignored labor pool gave him a decisive edge. Back in Berlin, German intelligence struggled to comprehend what they were seeing. Declassified files from the Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv in Freiburg reveal growing alarm through 1943. An August 15, 1943 report to Dönitz stated, Allied merchant vessel construction now exceeds 1.5 million tons monthly, 3 times our most optimistic destruction projections. Reconnaissance indicates significant female employment in production roles. This labor mobilization approach has not been implemented in the Reich. The strategic implications were catastrophic. The Battle of the Atlantic hinged on a simple equation. If U-boats sank ships faster than the Allies built them, Britain would starve. In March 1943, U-boats achieved their greatest success. 627,000 tons sunk, but American yards alone produced 1.3 million tons that same month. The Allied merchant fleet was growing, not shrinking. At a May 31, 1943 conference with Hitler, Dönitz laid out the truth. My Führer, we face a mathematics problem we cannot solve through military action. The Americans are building merchant ships using industrial workers, many of them women, with minimal training. Their production exceeds our destruction capacity by a widening margin. Unless we can disrupt their shipyards directly, the battle is lost. Hitler's response, recorded in the Führer conference minutes, revealed the fatal flaw in Nazi ideology. This is what happens when a nation abandons traditional values. American women should be home raising children, not working in factories. This degeneracy will be their downfall. History proved the opposite. The degeneracy of women in factories became the foundation of Allied victory. Kaiser's system achieved the unthinkable. Where traditional yards took 230 days to build a Liberty ship, Richmond Yard No. 2 set a record on November 12, 1942. The SS Robert E. Peary was completed in 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes, from keel laying to launch. Even in routine production, ships were finished in 30 to 60 days. By war's end, Kaiser yards had built 1,490 Liberty and Victory ships, nearly one-third of all U.S. merchant vessels produced during the war. Rose and her crew contributed directly. On December 3, 1943, they completed their final section on the SS Christopher Newport, the 214th Lib. Ship from Richmond No. 2. Built in 47 days, it joined a fleet that carried 80% of all Allied military cargo across the Atlantic and Pacific. A photograph taken that day shows 12 women in welding gear standing before the completed hull. Rose is third from the left, hood pushed back, eyes steady. This image was distributed by the Office of War Information, dropped as propaganda leaflets over occupied Europe, and published in newspapers worldwide. The message was clear. America's strength included everyone, and that inclusiveness made it unstoppable. The human cost was real. Kaiser yards operated 24/7 in 3 8-hour shifts. Workers faced falling steel, arc flash burns, toxic fumes, and industrial accidents. Between 1941 and 1945, 97 workers died in Kaiser Shipyards. Thousands more were injured. Husband, preserved in the Oregon Historical Society, reveal the toll. My hands are covered in small burns that never quite heal before I get new ones. I'm so tired by the end of shift that I fall asleep on the bus ride home. But James, we're building ships faster than anyone thought possible. Every hull we complete is one more ship carrying supplies to you and the other boys fighting overseas. That thought keeps me going. She worked 6 days a week, seeing her children only on Sundays. She logged 3,847 hours over 42 months, contributing to 47 ships. When the war ended in 1945, the cultural expectation was clear: women should return home. Kaiser's female workforce plummeted from 30,000 in August 1945 to fewer than 3,000 by December. Rose received her termination notice on October 12, 1945. She reunited with James in Portland and resumed life as a housewife. In a 1982 oral history interview, she reflected without bitterness. People ask if I was angry about being pushed out after the war. Honestly, I was exhausted. 3 years of shipyard work was enough. But I was also proud. We had done something important, something people said was impossible. For 3 years, I was part of something bigger than myself. That stayed with me forever. The legacy endured. The female labor force participation rate rose from 27% in 1940 to 32% by 1950, continuing to climb for decades. Kaiser's task-specific training model influenced vocational education nationwide. His wartime healthcare system for workers evolved into Kaiser Permanente, serving over 12 million members today. Admiral Chester Nimitz captured the strategic truth in his 1960 memoir. We did not defeat Japan through superior strategy or martial valor alone, though our forces demonstrated both. We defeated Japan through superior logistics, supplied by a merchant fleet built faster than the enemy could destroy it. That fleet was constructed by American workers, many of them women, who had never held industrial tools before 1941. The housewives who became welders won the Pacific War as surely as the Marines who stormed beaches. Rose Hickey lived until 1997. Her granddaughter, speaking at a 2015 symposium, said, "My grandmother never called herself a feminist, but she showed me through her life that women could do anything." She had welded steel plates on ships that crossed the Atlantic under attack. After that, what challenge could possibly be too difficult? In Berlin, September 1943, Dönitz knew the war was lost. Not because of a single battle, but because of a system that mobilized an entire society, including those long excluded from industrial labor, and organized them with ruthless efficiency. You cannot sink what is being built faster than you can destroy it, and you cannot defeat a nation that believes capability has no gender. The German spies were right to be haunted. American women weren't just building ships. They were building victory. One weld, one shift, one hull at a time. And they did it in 4 days, not 230. In the end, the war was not won by slogans or symbols, but by steel, sweat, and systems that dared to see potential where others saw only tradition. The women of the Kaiser Shipyards did not set out to shatter centuries of assumption about gender and labor. They showed up because their country needed them, and in doing so, they redefined what was possible. Admiral Dönitz and his intelligence officers understood the implications too late. They saw the photographs, read the reports, and grasped the cold arithmetic. A nation that mobilizes all its people, regardless of background, experience, or gender, cannot be outproduced, outlasted, or defeated. Rose Hickey and tens of thousands like her returned to quiet lives after the war, their overalls exchanged for aprons, their welding torches for kitchen spoons. But the precedent they set could not be undone. They proved that excellence is not inherited. It is taught, practiced, and earned. And that when opportunity meets organization, period. Ordinary people achieve extraordinary things. The Liberty ships they built carried more than cargo. They carried the weight of Allied strategy, the hope of occupied nations, and the quiet conviction that democracy, at its best, draws strength from everyone. That is the true legacy of the four-day ship. Victory does not belong to the strongest alone, but to the most inclusive.